Hey all, this is Dr. Robinson. This lecture will accompany Chapter 11, your textbook reading, Chapter 11, the opioids. As you all are probably very well aware, we are in the middle of an opioid epidemic in this country. The numbers of overdoses and overdose-related deaths are astronomical and staggering. You've got a couple of videos that I want you guys to watch, and some of them are a little difficult to watch, but I think it's really important that you know what's really going on and what folks like EMS and police officers are doing, because you will more than likely meet with these folks after they have been revived, after they have sort of been to the emergency room, or maybe have even had multiple overdoses. And then certainly you will work with folks who will eventually go on to overdose, and some that will die. And then, of course, you will certainly have some that you work with that have far better outcome. But this is a very, very, very important chapter right now. I will say, and I think it's important to mention, that every, let's say, 10 years or so, there is a drug du jour. There is the hot button drug, and in this moment in time in the United States, it happens to be opiates and heroin and fentanyl and the like. And we can sort of go backwards, and certainly in the 90s, it was more club drugs. In the 80s, it was cocaine. In the 70s, well, in the 70s, it was 60s and 70s, it was pretty much anything. And then certainly in the 50s, there was benzos, particularly with women. And then alcohol, of course, going beyond that. So we can kind of trace back that there have been this 10-year span of approximately, of course, but where there's one drug that just seems to be very problematic and very much at sort of the forefront of us needing to attack a particular problem, a particular epidemic. Right now, it's the opiates, and certainly we do need to pay attention to that. So anyway, let's keep going on. So I know there's a lot of slides. I don't really know why I'm finding this is the first time I've taught from this textbook, and I don't particularly like it. I've taught from other textbooks before, and I think I'm going to have to find another one. But the slides are lengthy, of course, so I'm not going to go through every slide, but what you need to know about opiates is they are pain reducers. So they are the goal of them is to numb, and that is physically, and of course, as you read in your chapter, that's psychologically. So the goal is to numb pain, and they're very good at numbing pain, very, very good. And there's some long-acting pain reducers, like morphine and Dilaudid. And then there's some short-acting pain reducers like Oxy, and then certainly fentanyl. We'll talk about that specifically in a little bit. But the long-acting, there's just different categories, and I'm not, you guys can read in your textbook. But they do a very good job at reducing pain. I don't know that we knew necessarily in the very beginning when we were thinking about this drug and how beneficial it is, that it would also have the same effect on numbing emotions and psychological woes. So you can imagine that if someone is, let's say they experience trauma, or there's a mental health issue that they are looking to self-medicate, you can imagine that emotionally and psychologically feeling numb is much better than feeling the trauma, the depression, the anxiety, whatever it may be, and so it makes a lot of sense. They do produce a sense of euphoria, so it feels really good, and the best way of describing how it feels is warm. And you'll hear individuals who regularly use opiates or heroin that they feel warm. It's like a warm hug. It's also been described as orgasmic. And so imagine never feeling, by virtue of family, friends, passions in your life, imagine never really being able to feel that. And then you feel that through the substance. And of course, that would be such a reinforcer and such a motivating factor for you to continue to go back and do this. The obvious extreme end is that it is it sort of depresses, in addition to numbing pain, it depresses all of your sort of respiration and digestion, and can ultimately reduce respiration and organ function so severely that it results in death. I'm going to kind of jump through to, the book goes into a really great history of opium and how that came to be. And of course, the Egyptians, we're back at the Egyptians. Those folks did some phenomenal documenting, but they, certainly described using it for medicine and the benefits of that way back then. And then, of course, in the, then you've got laudanum, which your book talks about in detail. And so just a great description of the history of opiates. And then certainly we started to see, there is documentation that this was becoming a problem, even way back then. So there's the opiate plant. Here's an old advertisement or whatever of laudanum. If you watch any old movies, you'll hear them reference laudanum, and that's obviously what they're talking about. And some well-known folks were expected to have been addicted to laudanum and had some pretty severe problems with it. Let's see. This whole section here going on talks about morphine, and so I really like this. Let me see if they have it here. I don't think they have nope. Okay. Sorry. On page 354, figure 11.4, I really like this. Kind of breaks it down from the natural, opium, morphine, codeine, Betaine, and then it goes to semi-synthetic, totally synthetic, and then the endogenous opioids here, the endorphins, dynorphins, that we have that are naturally occurring in our body. I think that's kind of neat. And then, of course, as it describes small differences in molecular structure determine sort of the effectiveness of it and what it can actually do. Let's see. It's a very rapid, this part here is really important for you to know, it's a very rapid onset. So when you inject it, and obviously we know from previous chapter that injecting a substance delivers the fastest way of receiving the substance and feeling the effect, but then again of the shortest duration. But this is very fast. So you inject it, you feel it, and then you'll often hear of it being called like a kick or the rush, but that's that immediate feel. Let's see, I'm going on. Naloxone. So I hope to get into this a little bit, but on page 355 of your textbook, it starts to talk about naloxone, or regularly referred to as Narcan. And this is the sort of opiate reversal drug. And it immediately reverses the effects, almost immediately reverses the effect of an opiate overdose. And this has been enormously life-saving. And it is recommended. And so when you guys go out and you're working in the field, it's recommended that individuals with friends and family members who are abusing opiates or heroin, that they have Narcan on their person or at their ready, so they can reverse the effects. Individuals who are using, as we know, their goal is typically, unless they are suicidal, but their goal is to typically not die. And we know that is certainly a consequence of using, a natural consequence of using, but the goal is not typically to die. And so if you can access something like Narcan and reverse the the overdose, then this could potentially give that individual an opportunity to seek treatment. And that might be the one opportunity that they use to benefit their long-term sobriety or change in recovery or whatever it may be. So maybe that one time. And again, being counselors, we're non-judgmental and we're not biased. And so it's not up to us. And this is sort of moving in a little bit of a harm reduction speak, but it's not up to us to determine when someone else needs to get help or to determine whether or not they're offered help just because they're choosing to, continue to use opiates. Of course, we know that, there's not a whole heck of a lot of choice when it comes to being addicted. But anyway, so I can talk about this for days and days and days, but I need to make sure I stay on track here for the sake of these short videos. So naloxone is something, and you have a video of somebody being revived by Narcan, and that's pretty typical of how that would happen. There's tons of videos out there. If you happen to work in an agency setting, you will probably be trained on Narcan use or naloxone use, and you may even have some, let's say, in your desk drawer. You will probably be trained on how to use that if you are around it. So let me keep going here. This here just talks about the increase in overdose and overdose deaths. Fentanyl is a synthetic. It's fully synthetic, and it is the latest count is like 100 times powerful than heroin, if I'm not mistaken. But it is so a very, very, very small amount goes a very, very, very long way. And that is problematic when you don't know that fentanyl is in your heroin that you are purchasing, and you shoot up the same amount that you regularly use. Just obviously we know this, so I want to shoot up the same amount just so I don't get sick, so I avoid withdrawal, but I shoot up the same amount not knowing that it's fentanyl, which is obviously much, much, much stronger, and then they die. The other aspect of that is that it's a much more stronger and intense high. So now we have also sort of set the stage, so think classical conditioning here, we've set the stage for the individual to have in their memory that intense feeling. And now a regular high on heroin isn't enough because I've already had this intense feeling. And so I really want to chase that kind of high, even knowing that fentanyl is related, is just resulting in so many overdose deaths. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, I wanted this slide to be in here because I think as advocates, we're counselors, we're social justice advocates, and we're certainly advocates for our clients and mental health issues. But I want to make sure that, as advocates, that we know that individuals, the perception in the country, and this is because people are not informed, but the perception is that if you give people overdose reversing meds, sorry, I kind of jumped around again, but if you give people overdose reversing meds, that it's just going to foster or support the idea that somebody needs to use. Well, again, going back in like harm reduction speak, it's not our decision. It's no one's decision, but that person's. And this is just a misnomer. This is fear, and it's fear that is misdirected. And so the idea is, well, if you give individuals this type of medicine, then you're just perpetuating use and really, again, going back to the idea that, well, it just gives somebody yet another opportunity to, or that one opportunity to seek help and seek treatment. Okay, so let's see. Let me keep going on. Oh, there's that chart that I wanted to add. And so this just kind of goes into injection. It can be snorted. You can smoke it. And then, of course, IV. And it would not be uncommon for you to have clients who have used or tried to or have used heroin or opiates in all of these various ways. Fentanyl is now being in a pill form. So I'm going to pick up here on this next video.